All right, are we ready to start?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're talking about the month of Elul, the month we're in now, the month leading up to Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. And there's a lot of conversation about what Elul is, what it means. Is it a good time? Is it a happy time? Is it a scary time? Is it what's our attitude supposed to be towards it? We have the phrase that we use, the acronym, I guess, for Elul, Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. And one part of the conversation is, which one is it? Or more specifically, which one comes first? Is it I am to my beloved, as if to suggest I commit myself or push myself to connect with my beloved? So that means from down here, we seek Hashem. Or is it the Dodi Li, my beloved is to me, as if to say Hashem looks for us. Hashem is seeking us. Who's initiating the search, so to speak, in the month of Elul? Ani L'Dodi and Dodi Li, which one kind of comes first? So the truth is, you can argue that either one comes first. The more I connect to Hashem, the more Hashem responds in kind. And the more Hashem shows me love, the more I respond to Hashem. So we can probably relate to both experiences. But there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of different ways we could look at it. And today we're going to explore a very fascinating way of looking at this, okay? And this is going to be through the longest mashal, parable, you've ever heard in your life. But the purpose of this parable is not that at the end I'm going to give you a precise, clear explanation of what the lesson is. The purpose of the parable is that it itself will help awaken us to Elul. It'll help us find a perspective towards Elul. And we'll find ourselves somewhere within this parable. We'll find our character and we'll find our connection. Now, and that's it. So I don't have like one precise mindset I'm telling you to do, or that this book that I'm reading from is telling you to do, but rather a longer story. And the purpose is just, as we're saying this story, just see what it kind of triggers in your own mind. And maybe afterwards we'll discuss if anybody wants to share like what it did for them. So it's based on the Baal Hatanya. The Baal Hatanya, the first Lubavitcher Rabbi, wrote in very concise words, like I saw it inside. It's not a lengthy essay. He writes the concept, maybe you heard these, they're kind of like buzzwords in a sense, of Elul. He writes the words Hamelech Basada. The king is in the field. During the month of Elul, the king is in the field, as if to say Hashem goes out into the field. And the way some people understand that is, when the king is in his palace, he's hard to access. You have to, you need an appointment, you need to have an inn, you need to get through the guards, you need to find your way to the king when he's like on his throne. That's probably not such an easy time to do that. But if he's on the road, you catch him on a flight or on a train or something, he'll be much more accessible. So when he's on the road or in the field, he's more accessible. That's a beautiful idea. So this book that I'm reading from, called Eish HaMoadim, the fire of the holidays, of the Yom Tovim, takes this parable and runs with it and throws in a ton of detail. And again, for that purpose that I told you a minute ago, let's see what we get out of it. But I'm just letting you know, like, he gets this off of the Baal Hatanya, but the Baal Hatanya does not go into nearly this much detail. How do they say, like, dramatic detail added for, I don't know, there's some term they use when they're saying, we didn't make this up, but we did add drama and made up details. All right, so here goes the story. So we have a country, and the country is excited, is anticipating for the famous annual event, the biggest yearly event of this country. What is the event? It's an annual celebration of the king, kind of a coronation of the king. You might say a king only needs to be coronated once, but in this country, every year would be like a big ceremony. Everybody gets together and we re-crown the king. So everybody is focused on this one task. Everybody's focused on this task, preparing for this great day. The event has many details to it. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. And for the most part, everybody's busy. At least in the city, at least in the capital. In the big cities, everybody is very involved in what goes on in the government. People are always talking about it. And that's where the planning kind of goes on. But there are places where people don't really follow. They don't follow politics. They're not as interested. And that is out in the villages, out in the mountainsides. You have simple people living in simple villages and simple places. They're raising animals. They're growing vegetables. They've got sheep. They've got horses. They've got fruits and vegetables. And that's what they're busy with. They don't know anything else. They have no connection to the king. What does it care who's going to be the king? You know what matters? Who's the king? It matters who do I write the check out to on my taxes. That's all. They don't really care who the king is. They're living in peace. They don't need anything to do with it. But this king, he's very, altruistic. He's a very good person, and he wants to be the king over the entire country. Not as like a power grab, but out of love, he wants to be a leader and a role model for everybody, even the simple people. Even the simple people. From old to young, men and women, no matter what they do for a living, no matter how much they contribute in their tax money, he loves them all because they're born to the country. They're citizens of the country. And that's what matters to him. He doesn't really care the exact nature of what they think about him or the kingship or the government or politics. That's not the point. He has like a real concern and care for all the people in that country. But right here in the capital, you have mainly the more, I don't know, maybe you want to call them educated or wealthier, city people who are, crowning him as king. But he says, it's very nice that everybody right around me connects to me and wants me to guide the country. But I want to meet everybody. I want to connect to the simple folk. So he decides he's going to go on a trip. And he's going to go out to all these far-flung villages, and he's going to try to awaken their desire to have a connection with him. He wants everybody to be on the same page. He doesn't want to run a country where a nice amount of people like him or connect to him or respect him. But again, it's not any type of power grab. This is a really good person, really good king. All right, so he hits the road. And he's got a little bit of an entourage going with him. He's probably got soldiers, and he's probably got a convoy of Suburbans and Cadillacs. And he makes his way to the countryside. But when they approach, the entranceway of the village, he tells everybody else, hang back. This is not I don't want to invade my own village with a whole army. You hang back, I'm going to go in. So the people, the simple people in this village, they see the king is coming in and they start to freak out. Like, the only thing we know about this king is that we need to send tax money to him every year. It can't be good news that he's coming. He's not coming to tell us that taxes went down. So they're not very excited about this. All right, they're nervous. He walks into the village and they're waiting to see what he's going to say. And all of a sudden, he receives them, as we say in Jewish, with a pleasant hello, with a pleasant greeting. And he says, how you doing, my beloved people? He gives them a hug, gives them a high five. He says, you're all wonderful, you're all important to me. I came to see you. I came to get to know you a little bit. And I came to invite you to a big party that's going on in a couple weeks. The annual coronation of a king. I want to invite you to come, take your place, be a participant. So they're very surprised, very, very surprised. That the last thing they thought is that he was going to start referring to them as my beloved, my friend. And now, not only is he not like there to slap them with a bill, he's inviting them to like an amazing VIP event, the coronation of the king. So they're very touched, and they say, "Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there." They're very impressed. They didn't see that coming. All right, we go on. The big day arrives. The big day arrives. All these simple people, they wake up, and they're excited. You know, they dress up, they're ready. They're not going to go empty-handed. They have a whole different perspective of the king now. He's not like this guy who's just trying to get from them. Ironically, the fact that he went there and showed them love and didn't ask them for things actually makes them want to give to the king. Like, oh, you're not here to just take things from me? Well, I would love to give you a gift for this great day. So what do? They take together, the guy with the cucumbers puts a few cucumbers in a basket, and the guy with, growing onions puts a few onions in the basket. He tries to find the little cleaner ones. Whatever they could do, they're simple people. So their gifts look simple. So they got their prettiest potatoes is what they can offer the king. They put it in the basket and they make their way to the capital. The whole way they're excited. Wow, like my friend, the king, he's going to be so excited to see me. Just like he did the other day, he's going to greet me with open arms. He's going to give me a big hug. He's going to love what I'm giving him, the gift. He's going to accept it. He'll put it on his table. Maybe it'll be what he eats from during this big party. Now, as they're approaching the city, they actually see that there's millions of people on the same journey. They're all going to the capital. They're all going to the big party. But on the way, they start to see that as they approach the capital, security increases, as you might expect. There's soldiers, there's guards, there's checkpoints. And they go up, and at some point, the road is closed in front of them. They're like, wait, this can't be right. And the guard stops them and says, where are you going? So what do you mean, where am I going? I'm an invited VIP guest of the king. And he says, nope, you can't pass here. Only the greatest ministers can pass through this area. And he starts fighting. What do you mean? I was invited. He says, look, there's a big open field here. This is the place for you. You guys can set up camp here. From here, you will participate in the party. And he's like totally embarrassed. Like, what? Like the king invited me just to give me this kind of, these tickets? And the guards aren't letting me in? What's going on over here? Okay, just chew on all this and see where it takes you in your own mind. There's going to be many more twists and turns. Okay, now what about the soldiers themselves? What about the guards, those who are actually preventing some people from going in? Are they allowed to go in? No, they can't either go in. They can't either turn around, leave their post, and just walk in. They're also not from the most inner circle of the king to be able to make their way to the courtyard of the palace itself, or maybe even into the palace. As you get closer and closer to the king, there's a smaller and smaller group that are able to get that far in. So outside is the big masses, inside is, maybe government workers or people who are closer, people who support the king, people who help run the country. And then as you get to the palace and within the palace, it gets filtered out more and more and more. And eventually the king sits alone on his throne, totally disconnected from the simple people, from anybody. And so this big, the parade starts, and people, tens of thousands of people, millions of people from wherever they are in this setup of the capital, they start calling out, Yichi HaMelech, the king should live, the king is our king. And this is what happens every year. And just think about the contrast of the warm love that the king gave to everybody back when he was out in the field, but then when he's on the throne, he seems so unapproachable. Not just to the simple people, but actually to anybody. Yeah, somebody who's more connected will be closer, but really he's disconnected entirely from even his closest ministers. He sits alone on his throne. So what are the thoughts that are going through this guy's mind? You know, he's out there, he's holding his basket of potatoes and onions. He schlepped all the way here. The king, he thought the king was going to come out and greet him based on the love that he got a couple weeks ago. What should he do? Should he even take his fruit back home, his vegetables back home? Should he leave it with one of the guards or something? But then he starts to think to himself, everybody here is a friend of the king. And he loves everyone. And it is obvious, at least at this point, to this person, that the king did not go out all the way to his village just to visit him. He went to every village and he visited everyone. It's not just him. But the king apparently has like a real concern and care and love for every single person. And the truth is, you can't put millions of people into the room of the king. That's impossible. You can't put millions of people in the courtyard of the palace. It's literally not possible. So there has to be some kind of order. If you think about it, it's not so insulting that you can't get all the way to the front. You were invited to the party. The reality is there's millions of people, so it makes sense that the ones who get closer will be the ones who are more dedicated to the king. He just showed up now. He had never had a connection to the king. So he's maybe a little bit farther out. There's a guest list and there's a clear, orders of who gets where based on their connection to the king. They're inside, they're outside, they're on the outskirts of the city, whatever it'll be. And he realizes that even the closest ministers are still not anywhere, they don't approach a place of closeness to the king himself. He's disconnected from everyone at the end of the day. Even if that person is closer than he is, he's still not anywhere close to the king. But his question is a question that might be going through his mind. If the king is so great, but the distance between me and the king is so great, why did he schlep out, putting on the show that he loves every single person? Was that real or was that not real? This is the question now that's lingering in his mind. Wait a second. Maybe he just wanted my vote. I don't know if you can ever imagine, we can't imagine this in American politics, but the concept of a candidate going out to far-flung places, to, middle of America, to try to tell everybody there that I'm the candidate who actually cares about you. The other candidate only cares about the big city people and the wealthy people. I care about middle-class America, lower class, whoever, minorities. I'm there for you. And then what happens when they get voted in? Maybe they forget about those people, right? Could we imagine such a thing? Perhaps. Perhaps we can imagine a politician doing that. No. Right, of course. Never my candidate. Is that what this king did? Was that about getting votes, getting people to show up at the party? But we're talking about an authentic, special, warm, caring, loving king. We're not talking about somebody who's in it for his ego, who's in it for the position. So which one is it? Which one is it? That's what he's wondering. What goes on throughout the year? How connected do these people who come to the party, how connected do they remain all year long? They'd be connected to the king if they follow his ways. If they follow the law. If they're breaking the law, then they're not being very respectful of the king. They're not being very connected to the king. All right, so some are more, some are less. Some when they mess up, it's not on purpose, it's accidental, it's out of ignorance. Some when they mess up, it's intentional. Even those who really, really try as hard as they can, they're not always successful. Even those who are doing what the king wants, sometimes it's with love and passion and a real commitment. And sometimes it's because they don't want to get a fine, you don't want to get punished, so you do it, but you're not really into it. That's what goes on all throughout the year. But somehow, when they all show up to this party, they're all in it. I don't know, maybe there's something about, the energy of a huge event, that says, okay, I may have not been perfect all year or so committed all year, but I'm on fire now. Just to veer off topic a second, maybe I shouldn't, but if you would go to the Siyum HaShas, you'd be in a stadium with 90,000 Jews, you will be on fire regardless of how many pages of the Talmud you missed in the cycle, or honestly, regardless if you learn Talmud at all. There's something about that energy of being there that says, I'm fully committed. Or in the case, let's say, of a Daf Yomi Siyum, I value Torah. I love Torah. I might not even be able to tell you that I learn Torah every day, but today I can definitely tell you I really love it. I'm really passionate about it. So here, they're totally committed to the king. They're screaming, Yechi HaMelech, the king should live, the king should be our king forever. They mean that. They're happy about it. They're excited to be there. They're excited to have such a loving and caring and amazing king. So which one is right? Which one is right? Is the king authentic and are the people authentic? Okay, the last 2 points I said, one was a question of whether the king is authentic. He schlepped all the way out to show everybody how much he loves them, and then when they show up, he doesn't seem to greet them with the hug that he did when he went out to visit them back in the day. And the second thing is, are the people authentic? During this event, they're on fire, they're committed, they're screaming, long live the king. But during the year, if you watch their behavior, it might not seem like they're so committed. So the question goes on them also. Are they committed? Are they authentic? Is the king authentic? Are we all faking it over here? So we're going to approach this point with a mushal. You want to hear a parable? I told you, don't wait for the ending. It's not about an ending. It's about the journey of the parable.
I have to put to be continued or something.
Yeah, maybe.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, we got some time still. No, you don't need the ending. I don't think you need the ending. I think the mushal is really all we need. We'll talk about it more.
1 second.
Yeah.
Why did the king invite?
Yeah.
He didn't have room for everybody to be there.
Well, the guy did discover after some reflection that he did have room for everybody, just not in the same building. So the nature of the event is going to be that it's going to spill out throughout the village.
Maybe he should have told them so it wouldn't have been so...
Maybe he should have told them that it's going to be sellout crowd.
Maybe,
Right.
there will have different sections. You'll be in section A and you'll be in section
Yeah.
B.
Right. Well, it seems that the guards did have such a list, but the people who were invited didn't. Yeah, maybe they should have. But would you schlep across the country if you knew you had the worst seats in the entire event?
Yeah, maybe not. But I'm thinking of Lahavdil Achashverosh when he did his big party.
Mm-hmm.
And he invited everyone also, and the Jews unfortunately went. But he seemed to have room for everybody. I know it's
Right.
just a story, it's just
Right.
a show. But everyone showed up, and everyone seemed to be wined and dined.
Yeah.
So he obviously had room.
Yeah.
So I guess I get it, it's so much. It's
Yeah.
a story. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so he says he's going to explain this point with another scene. It's not really a story, it's just a scene. Picture a king. Okay, you have a king he's on his throne in the palace, and he's surrounded by his most loyal advisors and bodyguards. And there's an atmosphere of awe and respect and fear and honor in the room. This is a serious room. And in the middle of that, the king's grandson comes into the room and runs to go sit on his grandfather's lap. And two bodyguards grab him by the arms, pick him up, and throw him out of the room and kick him out. Okay? So this poor kid is like heartbroken. He's like, yesterday I was bopping up and down on Zadie's lap. I was on his lap playing. He was playing rubber duck with me. And today I go in and I get thrown out like I'm a stranger, like I'm not the king's grandson. What's going on over here? But the king's servants explained to him, yes, the king is your grandfather. Yes, he loves you very much, even today. But right now, he's activated as the melech, as the king. And as with his identity of a king, there's a certain distance that needs to be kept. There's an awe and respect that needs to be while the king is on his throne, taking care of business. And that's why it's not the time for you to run and play in his lap. But it doesn't mean that he has any kind of lack of love for you at all. So why? What changed? What changed? Just because he put his crown on, he takes his crown off? What changed? So he explains that when his crown is on, he actually explains this from a sefer, the Mayim Chaim. When the king is wearing his crown, his essence as a king is revealed. And the essence of that role is one of elevation. He's elevated. He's above. He's holy and separated. And even his beloved, adorable grandkid doesn't take away from that. And therefore, it's not appropriate for him to come and play on the king's throne right now. When he takes his crown off, so then he relates to his people in a more external way. It's not like this exalted level of king. And then he's going to lower himself to relate to the people around him. For the grandkid, he's playing games. For his ministers, he's talking or schmoozing or whatever he's doing. So this is amazing where he goes with this. This is a plot twist, in my opinion. So at first glance, it seems way more geschmack, way better. It feels way better to relate to the king when he's relatable. When he's going out giving hugs, that's when I want to hang out with the king. Like, that's when he's just so friendly to me and loving to me. I like that. I like hanging out with people who love me and who are warm to me. So it feels better. But if you think about it on a deeper level, there's another way to connect to the king, and that is for who he really is. He's not lowering himself to connect to you, but he remains who he is. And if you have a real love for him, then you don't need to ask him to come down and give you a fist bump or a hug. You enjoy, you appreciate to have your role in connection to him for who he really is. You don't need him to put on a almost costume to pretend he's relatable, to come down and be friends with you. Really, it's a much higher level to connect to the king in kingship. But it doesn't feel as good, which is why that simple folk who was out there in the field loved, being activated by the love of the king. So if you don't know the essence of a king, then you just love when somebody is warm and friendly to you. It just feels good. But if you know him, I guess in the case of these examples, the ministers, the people who are much closer to him, they're happy with their relationship with him. Well, the king is the king. They're fine with the fact that the king is on a throne in the room by himself and everybody else has to be outside. We're not his boy. We're not his friend. We serve him. The more you get to know him, the more you realize you don't need it. The highest level is not he comes down to my level and we have a feel-good relationship, but rather he is the king and that's what I like about him and I want to serve him. And he doesn't need to come here and give me candies and hugs. See, I didn't see that coming because I would have thought that the best way is the way that feels good. Who wants a relationship of fear? I shouldn't say fear, of like awe. Wouldn't I rather one of love? I'd much rather the hugs and the warmth. But we're suggesting here that the essence of the king, who he really is the greatest thing to love, to be committed to. So if you need it, kind of, it almost seems like, if you need it, take the hug. But as you get closer, you'll learn that it's not about the hug. You learn it's about the reality of commitment and dedication to the king. And this is the answer to the question. Yes, the king is high and elevated and separated above the rest of the city. And he has no, in his essence and reality, he has no place hanging around on the street with people. But since the people need a king, the king's passion to bring everybody into this relationship will cause him to take the crown off for a minute. It'll cause him to go out and do outreach. Literally, he's going out and he's doing outreach. He's going out and he's relating to the people the way they need to be related to. There's an expression, Ein melech b'lai am. There's no king without a nation. Okay, this is a fact. This is a fact, meaning, in the years of what they call it, the Arab Spring. Remember the Arab Spring? The Arab Spring says, Ein melech b'lai am. You can't have a dictator whose people don't want him, or a king. If the people really don't want you, eventually they'll overthrow you. Just a question of like, how long does it take and how many people die in the process? But ultimately, there is no uniqueness, there's nothing special about a king whose entire country hates him, even if he brutally suppresses them or anything like that. There's no such thing as a king, as a kingship or a king without a people. There's no honor to a king whose people don't know him or don't connect to him or don't like him. When the people want him as king, that's how you become a king. And since people don't understand the king at this deep level, like his closest advisors or ministers do, they're not going to have a desire to greet him or to connect to the kingship. Like, how could they have a desire if they don't even know who he is? If they're a simple person in a village in the middle of nowhere and they don't know anything about the king, then how do you expect them to have a passion for the king? So you hear the problem? The most ideal way to connect to the king is not a warm, friendly relationship like you want to have with your relative or your friend. It's with a dedication to the essence of the king. But if you don't value that and appreciate it, then how in the world are you ever going to get there? And that's why the king goes out to the field with love to connect with his people. It's not a trick. It's not a bait and switch. It's not a trick at all. His essence is elevated and above, but the way to show his people who he is, he needs to invite them in first. He needs to invite them in. The way to invite them in is with love and friendship. So that's why he goes out there. Now they come in, they go through all this thought process. They start to connect to the king for who he really is, and then they're really committed to the kingship. And one more point, and then we'll stop at this point and we can talk about it. So that addresses the king. Is he authentic or not? Or was this a big scam, Now what about the people? The people, they seem all into it today, but look at them throughout the year and they're, cheating on their taxes, using our example over here. So what are they? What does it mean to be inspired and committed and excited in one era, at one time, or in one holiday, but then a few months later, look at what you're doing and man, where'd that go? Where'd that go? Are you real? Are you not real? And he says the answer is, and he's kind of cheating here because now he starts talking about, you probably didn't see this coming, the Jewish people, the month of Elul, the coronation of Rosh Hashanah, you know. He says many people throughout the whole year, I have to see if I understand this, but let me read it and we'll see if we understand it. The question he's coming to address is, why do I need to stand up and pretend I'm a tzaddik in Elul and Tishrei when I know what goes down in Teves and Shvat, you know, in the winter and the spring? And he says the answer is that all year round, a person finds himself affected by outside influences that might cause him to act in certain ways. But during Yamim Naraim, during Elul and Tishrei, his essence comes out. He's not faking it then, and his essence is someone who wanders and strays and cheats on his taxes. That's not his reality, and now he's faking it during these months. But rather, during this time, his true essence comes out. This is when he is real. And the rest of the year is when he's fake. Totally the opposite of what you might think. You might think we come to Elul and we put on a show, and then that fizzles out. No. We come to Elul and Tishrei and we become ourselves for as long of a sweet amount of time that we can manage to do that. And then we often get swept up with outside influences. In order to bring out our core self that is fully committed to the kingship of Hashem, Hashem needs to rope us in with love. And in that sense, of course, we are that village, that villager. We are that person who's out on the village, out on the mountainside, out in the farms. We're simple. We might seem to be distant from Hashem. We're not maybe always so involved in the kingship. But Hashem knows that we want to be committed. He knows that our core essence is holy and pure. And therefore, he ropes us in the most beautiful way by going out into the fields. Hamelech Basadeh. By going out in the month of Elul and kind of just orbiting within us and around us, he's showing us his love for us. And then he invites us to his coronation. But Elul is a month of warmth and love, and Rosh Hashanah is not the warmth disappears and now we're all serious and intense and scared and judgment. You hear, it's not that. It's that Rosh Hashanah, we realize that it's not about the warm relationship. That's not the highest goal. The highest thing we could do is to be committed to the king, is to want the essence of the king for who he is, elevated and exalted and holy and way above us. That's the dream. That's the dream. The way to get there is through a warm relationship. So that's why he comes in Elul. He comes around us. He's out in the field. And what that means in practical terms is that if we awaken ourselves to this and try to connect to Hashem, maybe a little bit more than we do throughout the year, we will find it easier. That is a fact. That is the energy in the air. The energy in the air is that if you try during this month, you will find connecting to Hashem easier. That's what it means that the king is in the field. And then as we get to Rosh Hashanah, we want an even deeper relationship with the king. And as is the case at this time of year, I would also say, is the case at all times of year. What I mean to say is, we seek feel-good Judaism, and I don't say that as if it's a negative thing. It's like the most beautiful thing. And if you ever hear me talk, I talk about it all day and all night, and I don't talk about anything else practically. A relationship with Hashem that is delicious and real and tangible, and you feel His presence, and you love Him and His presence, and that is ideal. That's what we want. We want to connect to mitzvahs so deeply that we see them as tools to come closer to Hashem, to feel close to Hashem. But just something to chew on is that that's not even the highest level. The highest level is feel good or no feel good. I am committed to the King for who He is. I'm not in this because it feels good. This burger and steak feels good and is delicious, and also a spiritual high feels good, as if they're comparable. I'm in this because I'm committed to the King. I want to serve the King. That's it. I'm not in it for the warmth and the feeling. So don't let that stop you from looking for the warmth and the feeling. I'm just saying, but to me it was very powerful to learn that there's an even higher level. And it's okay, maybe I'm not there yet. Fine, great. Hold on to the warmth, because without it you have nothing. Without it, it's very hard to commit. It's very hard to feel close. But it's good to know in the back of our minds that there's an even higher level of just wanting to serve Hashem for the essence of who He is.